My name is Claudia Dixon, and I've been the Director of Operations at Polar Technologies for 6 years. 6 long years of late nights, crisis management, and turning potential disasters into minor footnotes that nobody remembers. I built the systems from nothing. I created the protocols that kept us running. I was the person everyone called when things went sideways, when servers crashed at 3 a.m., when clients threatened to leave. Until the day Veronica Kane decided I wasn't good enough anymore. Let me give you the context, because understanding what happened requires understanding where I came from. When I joined Polar Technologies 6 years ago, we were a startup with 40 employees and infrastructure that crashed every Tuesday. Literally every single Tuesday, like clockwork. Around 2 p.m., without fail, something would break. We joked about Technical Tuesday in the office, but clients didn't find it funny. Neither did our investors. I was employee number 41, hired specifically to keep the lights on and stop the bleeding. I did way more than that. I rebuilt everything from the ground up, piece by piece. Migrated us from a single failing data center that was held together with hope and duct tape to distributed cloud architecture across 3 geographic regions. Implemented redundancy protocols that could handle multiple simultaneous failures without customers even noticing. Created disaster recovery systems that we actually tested quarterly, not just talked about in board meetings, but actually ran full failover drills. When we grew from 40 employees crammed into a small office to 400 spread across 3 floors, the system scaled beautifully without major issues. When we landed our first Fortune 500 client, a massive insurance company processing millions of transactions daily, everything held steady under load that would have absolutely crushed our old infrastructure within minutes. I made myself invisible by making everything work seamlessly. And that became both my greatest strength and my biggest weakness. Because when things run smoothly, people forget the effort it takes. They forget the architecture decisions, the monitoring systems, the capacity planning. They just see someone who makes it look easy. Veronica Kane joined 2 years ago as COO when the board decided we needed adult supervision for our IPO plans. The board wanted someone with big company experience who understood Wall Street, someone who could speak the language of investors. She had the MBA from Wharton, 15 years of executive experience at name-brand Fortune 100 companies you'd recognize, and presentation skills that were genuinely impressive. She could make a quarterly loss sound like strategic victory, could spin any negative into a positive. What she didn't have was technical understanding. Any technical understanding whatsoever. She couldn't tell you the difference between a load balancer and a coffee maker if her bonus depended on it. During her second week at Polar, she asked in an executive meeting, completely seriously, why we couldn't just add more RAM to the cloud to fix a performance issue. I had to gently explain that's not how cloud infrastructure works, that RAM allocation in cloud environments is fundamentally different. She laughed it off as a joke, but I could see in her eyes she'd been completely serious. She spoke the language of synergies and paradigm shifts. I spoke the language of uptime and error rates. We were never going to be friends. But I tried to make it work. God, I really tried. I learned to translate complex technical concepts into simple business language she could understand and present to the board. I created executive dashboards with big green and red indicators instead of raw performance metrics and logarithmic graphs. I started every status report with business impact and revenue implications before diving into any technical details. I even attended her monthly leadership alignment meetings where we talked about company values and synergies for 2 hours instead of actually doing work. It didn't matter one bit. Because Veronica didn't just want competent people around her. She wanted loyal people who depended on her. People who owed their positions entirely to her. People who would defer to her judgment without question. People who would never, ever outshine her in front of the board or make her look bad. I was already there when she arrived, already established. I didn't owe her anything. I'd built my position through actual work, not politics. And worse, much worse from her perspective, when systems had issues at 2 a.m., people called me directly on my personal cell instead of going through proper channels and the chain of command she'd established. That made me a threat. Enter Damian Fletcher. Veronica hired him 3 months before everything went to hell. She didn't consult me. Didn't mention she was even looking for a senior operations manager. Just sent out an announcement one Monday morning, please welcome Damian Fletcher to the Polar Technologies family. He'd be reporting directly to me. I found out the same way everyone else did, from the email. Damien was everything Veronica valued. Princeton degree. MBA from Columbia. 5 years at McKinsey doing digital transformation consulting. He wore expensive suits and used words like optimization and synergistic value creation in every sentence. His slide decks were beautiful, perfect visualizations, animated transitions that probably took hours. They also communicated almost nothing of substance, but they looked impressive. Our first one-on-one, he spent 25 minutes telling me about his consulting projects. How he'd helped a telecommunications company reimagine their operational framework. I finally interrupted. What do you want to learn about our systems? He looked surprised. Oh, I reviewed the documentation. Very thorough. Maybe too thorough. I think we can streamline a lot of processes. Too thorough. Red flag. The first month, I gave him legitimate real-world projects specifically designed to help him understand how we actually work day to day. Document our complete incident response procedures with every step, decision point, and escalation path. Audit all our vendor contracts to understand our dependencies, costs, and risk exposure. Interview the engineering team systematically about their biggest pain points, bottlenecks, and what kept them up at night. He delegated absolutely everything to junior staff members, recent college graduates who were eager to help, and then presented their findings verbatim in his meetings with Veronica as his comprehensive analysis of our operational landscape. I sat in one of those meetings, biting my tongue, and watched him present slides that contained direct quotes from emails my senior engineers had sent him, with zero attribution or acknowledgement. The second month, he started inserting himself into every single one of my meetings. Not contributing anything useful or insightful. Just sitting there with his expensive laptop open, taking extensive detailed notes on everything everyone said, nodding thoughtfully and seriously at all the right moments like he understood the technical nuances. Then he'd schedule separate private follow-up meetings with Veronica where he'd present his personal interpretation of what he'd observed, filtered through his consulting frameworks. I started hearing about those meetings through the grapevine. How he'd point out supposed inefficiencies. How he'd question whether we were best in class. The third month, Veronica started every conversation the same way. Damien raised an interesting point about cloud spending. Have you considered reserved instances? Damien suggested implementing an ITIL framework. What's your perspective? Damien raised. Damien suggested. Damien thinks. I'd explain the technical reality. Veronica would nod, then mention Damien's perspective again. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. I could see what was happening. Damien was positioning himself as the sophisticated alternative. Veronica was building a narrative that maybe I wasn't the right person for the next level. I started documenting everything. Every conversation. Every decision. Every recommendation ignored. When politics enter, documentation is your only shield. Then came that Tuesday morning in early October. A morning that would change everything. I woke at 6:30 a.m. to my phone buzzing insistently on my nightstand, the specific alert tone I'd set for critical system issues. Monitoring alert. API gateway error rate spike, 2.3% above our carefully established baseline of 0.8%. Not immediately catastrophic or emergency level. Most operations directors would dismiss it as normal variance, statistical noise in the data. But I'd seen this exact signature, this specific pattern of escalation, 2 years ago, right before a major cache synchronization failure that took us completely offline for 6 painful hours and cost us 2 enterprise clients who never came back. I didn't even shower or make coffee. Just threw on jeans and a sweater that were draped over my bedroom chair, grabbed my laptop bag with shaking hands, and drove straight to the office through early morning traffic that was just starting to build on the highway. I arrived at 7:30 a.m., went straight to the break room to make terrible burnt coffee from the cheap machine, and headed directly to my desk with a sense of dread building in my stomach. By then I had 3 more alerts waiting in my queue, each one more concerning than the last. Error rates climbing steadily upward in a curve that looked ominously exponential. Latency increasing across multiple endpoints in ways that suggested systemic issues, not isolated problems. Customer complaints already starting to trickle into the support queue from our early morning users in Europe and Asia who were trying to access the platform for their business-critical workflows. I immediately pulled together my most senior engineers via urgent Slack messages. Calvin Perry, for solid years with us, brilliant systems architect who understood our infrastructure better than anyone except maybe me. Olivia Chen, 3 years, database expert who could diagnose complex replication issues in her sleep and had saved us more times than I could count. Marcus Wright, 5 years, the talented engineer who'd personally written at least half of our sophisticated monitoring infrastructure and could read system logs like other people read novels. We started diagnostics, cache coherency checks, database replication lag analysis, network throughput monitoring. All the usual suspects. By 9 a.m., I had a theory. By 9:30, confirmation. Cascade failure building in the distributed cache synchronization layer. A race condition developing under specific load patterns. If we didn't act immediately, full system failure within 72 hours. Maybe less. This wasn't guesswork. I'd seen this before. I knew the warning signs. I called an emergency crisis meeting. Sent the invite to all department heads and executives. 10 a.m. Conference room A. Subject, critical infrastructure issue, immediate response required. I spent the next 30 focused minutes preparing everything we would need for the executive presentation. Technical analysis with detailed graphs showing the error rate acceleration pattern and projecting where we'd be in 24, 48, and 72 hours if left unaddressed. Comprehensive risk assessment with probability curves showing likelihood of full failure at different time intervals. A complete 3-phase response plan with specific timelines, exact resource requirements, expected outcomes for each phase, and contingency options if things didn't go according to plan. Everything meticulously documented, everything backed by data, everything defensible to even the most skeptical executive. Conference room A was the fancy executive conference room, the one they showed to important clients and investors. That ridiculously expensive dark wood table that probably cost $40,000 and seated 16 people comfortably. Floor-to-ceiling windows with panoramic views of the downtown skyline. Plush leather executive chairs that were more comfortable than my couch at home. A massive state-of-the-art 4K display for presentations that had cost another small fortune. The kind of room specifically designed to impress clients and board members with our success and sophistication, not to actually do real operational work or solve technical problems. Executives began arriving promptly at 10 a.m., right on schedule. Lawrence Wong from finance, always exactly punctual, already checking urgent email on his phone as he took his seat. Olivia Brennan from legal, with her ever-present expensive leather portfolio full of contracts, liability assessments, and worst-case scenario documentation. Stephen Winters from marketing, who never quite fully understood what operations actually did but always had strong opinions about how we communicated technical issues to clients and the press. Zara Patel from customer success, who'd become a genuine friend over years of late-night crisis calls and shared frustration. She was the only one who made direct eye contact with me and gave a small, concerned nod that said she knew something was wrong. Victor Ashby from product, brilliant at innovative feature design but completely disconnected from the infrastructure reality that made those features actually work. Veronica was the last to arrive, as usual. She walked in at exactly 10:07, moving with that deliberate, measured confidence she projected in every single meeting to establish her authority. Damien trailed exactly 3 steps behind her like an eager puppy following its owner, carrying his expensive laptop and a leather-bound notebook. "Sorry for the delay," she said in a tone that suggested she wasn't actually sorry at all, that making people wait was just another power move. Damien and I were just discussing the situation in my office. Getting strategically aligned on our approach before we came in here. She took her customary seat at the head of the table, the clear power position that nobody else would dare take. Damien sat immediately to her right, in the exact spot I'd occupied in every single executive meeting for the past 3 years. That should have been my first warning sign that something was fundamentally wrong, that this wasn't going to be a normal crisis meeting. "All right, Claudia," Veronica said, settling into her chair and folding her hands on the polished table surface in that authoritative way she had. "Walk us through this crisis situation. What exactly are we looking at here?" I opened my presentation. At 6:47 this morning, we began detecting anomalous error patterns. Before we get into technical details, Veronica interrupted, "I want to level set on something." My stomach tightened. "I've been reviewing our crisis management approach," she continued. "Claudia, you're knowledgeable. No one disputes that. But knowledge and crisis leadership are different skills. Crisis situations require calm, analytical decision-making. I've successfully managed 7 major incidents in 2 years, I said. And each took longer than our SLA commitments, Damien interjected smoothly. I've reviewed the postmortems. There's a pattern of over-engineering when faster approaches would work. Over-engineering. From someone who'd never fixed anything. Those solutions prevented recurrence, I said carefully. That's proper crisis management. See, that's what I mean. Veronica leaned forward. You're emotionally invested in being thorough. Sometimes thorough is the enemy of fast. I think Damien should take lead on this crisis. The words hung in the air. He handles pressure better than you. She smirked. 6 years. 6 years of building this place. And this was what I got. I see, I said, my voice far away. And my role? You'll support Damien. Provide documentation. Think of it as mentoring. I closed my laptop. The click sounded loud. Good luck, I said. And I walked out. Back in my office, I sat at my desk. My hands were shaking. Not from fear. From rage. From the audacity of being told I didn't handle pressure well. Me. The person who'd kept this company running through a data center flood. Who'd fought off ransomware. Who'd debugged a critical issue during my father's funeral. I took 3 deep breaths. In through the nose. Out through the mouth. Then I made a decision. If they wanted to handle this without me, they could. I sent Damien one email, per Veronica's direction, you're now lead on the infrastructure crisis. All documentation is in the shared drive under /infrastructure/crisis_response. Let me know if you need anything. Claudia. Professional. Helpful. Hands off. 2 minutes later, thanks Claudia. I've got this under control. I think we're going to take a different strategic approach. Sometimes fresh thinking is exactly what's needed in a crisis. Damien. Fresh thinking. I forwarded both to my personal account. Documentation. The thing about infrastructure crises, they're like icebergs. You see the errors, but the real danger is underneath. The cascading dependencies. The legacy code. The workarounds that became permanent. I knew every inch of that iceberg. Damien knew what he'd read. Day 1, I watched from the sidelines. Damien held meetings. Lots of meetings. Teams running diagnostics, checking logs. All surface level. Engineers messaged me, should we check the cache layer? What about the load balancer modifications? I responded the same way, Damien is leading this. Please direct questions to him. It killed me. But they wanted fresh perspective, right? Day 2, problems escalated. Minor latency became intermittent outages. Customer complaints rolled in. Damien messaged, the team mentioned cache invalidation? Do you have notes? I sent the link. 73 pages. Veronica sent company-wide email, Damien Fletcher is doing an excellent job. We expect resolution within 24 hours. My friend Zara called that evening. 3 enterprise clients are threatening to pull contracts. I'm not on it. Veronica gave it to Damien. He's going to crash the whole system. Probably. And you're just letting him? They made their choice. Calvin messaged late, Claudia, I'm really worried. He's implementing changes without testing. Ignoring monitoring data. This doesn't feel right. I stared at that message. This was my moment. I could step in. Take control. I could also cement Veronica's narrative that I was too controlling. Document everything, I replied. Email trail, decision logs. If you believe there's genuine risk, escalate to Damien and Veronica. But this is their call. We all think this is a mistake, he responded. Noted. I muted Slack and left at 5:30 p.m. Went home. Made dinner. Read a book. Went to bed at a reasonable hour. The strangest feeling, being disconnected while knowing a crisis was building. Day 3. Wednesday morning. I woke to 127 messages and 18 missed calls. I knew before checking. The system was down. Completely. I pulled up the monitoring dashboard while eating breakfast. Complete failure at 3:47 a.m. I finished breakfast. Showered. Dressed. Drove to work at my normal time. The office was chaos. People running. Phones ringing. The receptionist looked like she'd been crying. I walked calmly to my office at 7:43 a.m. At 9:47 a.m., my door slammed open. Veronica stood there, disheveled, makeup smudged, suit wrinkled. The mask shattered. Why did everything collapse? She was yelling. You're the director of operations. How could you let this happen? I took a slow sip of coffee. I was removed from the crisis response, I said calmly. Remember? Damien handles pressure better than me. Don't give me that. This is your system. Was my responsibility. Until you decided I was too emotional. Where's Damien? He's in the server room. But they need your expertise. My emotional, attached, pressure-intolerant expertise? She closed her eyes. Claudia. Please. The board is calling. Clients threatening lawsuits. Every hour costs millions. I let the silence stretch. I want a formal apology, I said. In writing. To me, and in front of everyone from that meeting. Done. And I want Damien reassigned. Out of my chain of command. Fine. Whatever you want. Just fix this. I grabbed my laptop and walked to the server room. 12 engineers looked up. Relief flooded their faces. Damien stood in the corner, defeated. Everyone stop what you're doing, I said. Here's what happened. I pulled up the system architecture. 3 days ago, cascade failure in the distributed cache synchronization protocol. When Damien had you implement load balancer patches, you triggered a race condition in session management. Every fix addressed symptoms, not causes. This morning's failure was inevitable. I turned to the team. We're rolling back every change from the last 72 hours. Then 3-stage recovery. Over 6 hours, we methodically fixed everything. Roll back all changes. Disable cache entirely to restore basic functionality. Fix the race condition properly. Gradually re-enable cache with monitoring. By midnight, full functionality restored. Error rates at 0.7%, better than baseline. We're stable, I said. Everyone go home. Calvin approached. Thank you. For coming back. It's my job. No. You could have let us drown to prove a point. I'd never let the company fail. But I wasn't going to enable bad decisions by jumping in before people understood consequences. Eventually, just me and Damien. That was impressive, he said quietly. It's what I do every day. I'm sorry. I thought my consulting experience would translate. That frameworks were enough. They're not. Real expertise comes from years of doing the work. Making mistakes. Learning. What should I do? Find something you're actually good at. But stop pretending to be a technical expert. It's obvious to everyone. The next morning, Veronica appeared. Can we talk? She sat down heavily. I owe you an apology. Yes, you do. I made significant errors. Let politics cloud decisions. You were right about everything. I know. She almost smiled. You're not making this easy. She handed me a paper. Formal written apology. Going in your file and to all executives. I read it. Surprisingly honest. And Damien? Reassigned to strategic planning. No operational authority. I also want to discuss your role. VP of Operations. Significant increase. Equity package. Quarterly board reviews. I'll think about it. At 10 a.m., the postmortem began. Same room. I stood at the head. Veronica sat halfway down. I walked them through everything. The timeline. The decisions. The failures. The recovery. Before technical lessons, I said, let's address management failures. I looked at Veronica. You have something to say. She stood. I made a serious error removing Claudia from crisis response. I questioned her abilities despite 6 years of success. That decision nearly destroyed this company. It was my fault. She turned to me. Claudia, I apologize. Publicly and formally. You are exceptional. I should have trusted you. Thank you. I accept. The power dynamic had shifted. Permanently. That evening, Zara stopped by with wine. You did it. It wasn't about being brutal. About being right. Are you taking the VP offer? Haven't decided. Over the weekend, I thought about what I wanted. Monday morning, I walked into Veronica's office. I'll take the VP position. With conditions. What conditions? Quarterly reviews with the board. Final say on technical hires. And if you ever want to overrule my judgment, it goes to the board first. That's substantial autonomy. That's the autonomy I've earned. Do you want to risk another disaster? No. Then we have an agreement. The announcement went out. Engineering celebrated. Calvin raised his beer. To Claudia. To institutional knowledge, I said. And the patience to let reality make your case. 6 months later, everything stabilized. Veronica and I had a functional relationship built on clear boundaries. Damien left after 7 weeks. I got another offer from a competitor. 40% increase. I turned it down. Because I'd proven something important. That competence matters more than politics. That expertise outlasts favoritism. That people who do the work are more valuable than people who just talk. And I proved it by stepping back and letting the alternative speak for itself. There's a lesson in that. Sometimes the best way to prove you're right is to let someone else be wrong. Let them make decisions. Let them own consequences. Let reality be the teacher. It requires patience. Confidence. Being comfortable watching things get worse before they get better. But when you have the expertise, when you know you're right, sometimes stepping back is the most powerful move. Because truth always surfaces. It just takes time. And documentation. Always document everything. That paper trail saved me. So here's my advice if you're in this situation. Know your actual worth. Not your title or salary, but what you genuinely bring that no one else can. Document everything. Every decision. Every warning ignored. When things go wrong, you'll need proof. Set firm boundaries. When undermined, don't fight in the moment. Let them fail. Then negotiate from strength. Play the long game. Short-term wins don't matter if they cost long-term credibility. Remember, competence is the only currency that truly matters. When crisis comes, the only thing that matters is who can fix it. Be that person. Be so good that removing you creates obvious chaos. And when they realize they need you more than you need them? That's when you negotiate. That's when you set terms. I learned that through 3 days of watching everything nearly collapse. Through resisting the urge to jump in. Through letting people fail so they'd understand why I succeed. It wasn't easy. But it was worth it. Because now when I speak, people listen. When I recommend, people follow. When I say something's important, people believe me. Not because of my title. But because they learned, expensively, what happens when they don't. That's real power. The kind you earn by being so good your absence creates chaos. So if someone's questioning your expertise, pushing you aside, undermining your authority, take a breath. Document everything. Set boundaries. Then step back and let them learn. Truth has a way of making itself known. You just have to be patient enough to let it happen. Trust me on that one. Have you ever had to prove your worth by stepping away? Where you watched someone fail at something you could have prevented? Drop a comment. Share your story. Because navigating workplace politics is something we're all figuring out together. More lessons about being so good they can't ignore you. Even when they try. See you in the next one.